Hey guys, in this video we're going to be checking out and continuing our looks at the Steppenwolf wave as we have a look at the DC Comics Multiverse Justice League member, Aquaman. Going ahead and grabbing the tape measure, Aquaman stands at 7 inches tall, so he's actually a little bit closer to Batman and much taller than the Man of Steel. For his collect and connect piece, he comes with one of the legs for Steppenwolf, which again has that continuation of the blues that we've already seen with the other pieces. Let's go ahead and grab Steppenwolf now. This is basically where we've left off on him. He's got the torso, the lower skirt, and the head. And we kind of want to make sure we're making use of the right side on the torso. Plug it into place. Seems to snap in okay. It's already 10 times better than the Dormammu in the sense that, you know, snapping in. I say Dormammu because if you watch that video, like somehow getting the legs in place were just utmost difficult on that particular figure. But there we have Steppenwolf looking quite menacing actually. He's considerably taller than Aquaman, as he should be, especially for Collect and Connect, and of course being the main baddie from the Justice League movie. Let's do some other size comparisons, shall we? So we'll just go ahead and move his trident out of the way, put Aquaman kind of in the middle, and we'll bring in tactical suit, whatever you want to call it, Batman, which Aquaman... It's gray because Aquaman technically is taller, but Batman's got, of course, the ears from his cowl, which kind of gives him the same sort of level of height. And then if you pair him next to a more disappointing Superman, once again, Superman is just dwarfed, looking small, frail, and just an ugly head sculpt, I'm afraid. But Aquaman, of course, notably so, is taller than technically both, if you want to exclude the fact that Batman has the ears going there. Move those guys out of the way. Aquaman comes with a trident, a rather slightly warped trident. One thing I will say is you can probably see it right there. Right there. There's a stress mark. So while some would believe this to be flexible plastic, it's flexible by only so much. Taking it out of packaging, I've already developed a little bit of a stress mark right there. So be careful putting it into his hand, and certainly be careful storing this guy away, that trident doesn't get too bent, that it may cause a considerable fracture there. Paint-wise, doesn't really have much in the way of paint because instead it looks like it's been cast in like a dark gunmetal plastic. So there's really no paint to it. Instead it's just gunmetal plastic, which I think works fine. He only really has one hand to display the trident. This hand is completely closed. I did notice, though, that this hand, generally when you see these figures, their hands are fairly flexible in the sense that you can bend the 4 fingers outward. Aquaman's got very dense plastic, I noticed, in his hands, and getting the trident into his hand can be a little bit difficult. It's unfortunate, though, because it struggles to get the trident into his hand, but then when it's in his hand, it sits relatively loose. You kind of have to find that sweet spot where it doesn't actually flop around. But it does look good. I mean, it's proportioned to the size of the figure, you know, so displaying him, I definitely would be displaying him with the trident. I mean, you know, he just looks so BA with the trident. We'll get that out of his hand. Again, just a little difficult to get out of his hand. Now let's have a look at the figure. I have to admit, it is a beautiful looking Aquaman. If I could say beautiful, that's a poor choice of wording, I think, for describing a guy such as Aquaman here. Face sculpt looks good. In fact, it's one of the more accurate head sculpts, I would think, so far of the 3 figures that we had to look at. It's an uncanny likeness to Jason Momoa. He's got some nice paint there in his hair, so it's not just a very dark coloring. Again, really like the face sculpt. The eyes look good. He's got looks like what looks to be a little scar right above his eyebrow. The eyes have personality, a very pale iris on Aquaman 2. Again, some nice blonde added into the beard. I really like the head sculpt. The head seems like it's a little too big for the rest of his torso, and I think I could chalk that up to the fact that maybe the figure could have been afforded a little bit higher or a little longer of a torso, possibly. It just seems like his neck gets lost in there. Or maybe he could have used a little longer legs, something, because it does look like the head is a little bit too big for his body. The armor, actually, despite the fact that there's so much gold going on here, the armor actually is more closer to green, and then they've just washed over top of it this beautiful gold color. But this is really where you can see all the detailing in his armor and in the little shoulder plates here. He's got little fins on the sides. There's really a lot to admire for this particular figure here. And he's got the peg holes on the undersides of his feet. What I do like about it is that they still kept classic Aquaman in the color scheme. He's kind of got slightly the orangey gold color, which I like. He's got the scaling in this armor, which I do like. And he's even got like the Aquaman belt, which again is something that even classic Aquaman would have had. The hair and the longer nature of his beard and everything more resonates to the more grittier looking Aquaman. Around the time that I would have kind of got out of the Aquaman interests when he had the hook hand. But again, like the design of him kind of resonates from that sort of era, it seems. Tons and tons of different details there. Overlaying areas of texture. Again, you've got the areas that complement one another. They're going in different texture grades and directions. And really love the color and the gold on this. This figure really shines. He unfortunately, though, kind of falls into that same sort of dark, very dark coloring, which I think after looking at the Superman, which even in his, in his costume, he doesn't have a lot of vibrant colors other than really like the reds of his cape. Like he's very dark muted reds and dark muted blues. I'm really looking forward to actually reviewing the Flash, just because he's that pop of color that I feel like I'm missing a little bit so far in these figures. But let's go ahead and run through his posability, though. His head rotates left and right. You would expect, moving the head left back and forth, really, it does impede a lot. You could say some of that is due to his shoulders. You could say some of that has something to do with his hair. But there's a fair bit of restrictions when you move Aquaman's head left and right. Shoulders hinge outward, which don't seem as much the problem. The shoulders stay good enough out of the way, and they are loose appliances too, so they're really only attached by the top of the torso, that you can move the arms out fairly easy, and the shoulder pads don't, they're not in the way at all. The arms can't even technically rotate all the way around, and you can see, making use of these being softer plastic and hinged the way that they are doesn't limit any sort of posability, so I like that. Rotation in the bicep. He's got a bend at the elbow. Also rotates at the forearm, which is good. He's also got the rotation in the hand. Rotation in the waist. Kind of wish he had a crunch, like an ab crunch here. Surprised that he didn't. I mean, I get the fact that they wanted to keep the sculpt kind of together and intact, but they could have easily still put the actual crunch there, so you can actually have hinged the torso up and down. Legs move forward, back, and out, making use of what looks to be a brand new hinge joint. Doesn't have that little cut that the other figures have had. He's got the bend at the knee. A nice concealment also of the hinge joint. It does look a little malnourished, unfortunately, on the joint, but the kneecap on the front really does a good job of hiding that. You can rotate the lower leg as well as you can hinge the foot back and forth. And there is Aquaman. Now, I'm sure to no surprise, Aquaman is so far my favorite figure from the three figures that we had a look at. He delivers really a lot of things that I liked so much about the design of his armor. I like that they still kind of kept classic Aquaman in there with the scaled armor and, of course, the A on his belt. That was a nice little touch. But from a figure standpoint, I think this is the closest so far to the actual movie character. He's got a lot of the nice greens, he's got the popping of the gold, and his face sculpt is so far the best of the three figures that we had to look at. It has an uncanny likeness to Jason Momoa. I like the inclusion of the trident, which I think is a necessary touch to include for an Aquaman figure. Overall, I think this might be my favorite figure from this wave. Granted, that may change as we look at the other figures from this wave, but so far, digging what Aquaman here is delivering. Today, once again, we were checking out the DC Comics Multiverse. This was the new Justice League line of figures, and so happened to also be the Steppenwolf wave. Today, we were having a look at Aquaman. If you guys like this video, always appreciate hitting it with a like down below, and if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that little subscribe button down below. You won't miss a beat when it comes to future videos, and of course the rest of the Justice League. Those are still coming on this channel as well. You don't want to miss out on those. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.